Hello, it's Greg Zengaji. We're back. We hope you're having a happy day wherever you're watching this video content from. As always, I'd like to thank you for your continued support of Greg Zengaji on social media and writing efforts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're back with our 50 question series today, almost 50 questions on studying and learning Japanese. Been here 20 years, certainly sat through a number of Japanese classes and studied a lot of hours. Doesn't mean we have every answer. If it helps you learn Japanese, great. If it doesn't, at least you have some entertainment and something to think about. Let's get going. What are the basic writing systems in Japanese? There's kanji, hiragana, katakana, and romaji. All of them, to varying degrees, are learnable. Some of them take a lot longer than others, especially the kanji. So there's that. How long does it typically take to learn Japanese? I don't know. I'll let you know when I learn. No, it takes effort and time. If you're measuring it on as far as the JLPT, the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, I've seen people do EQ, which is the top level, in a year or two. And I've seen people unable to pass even level 5 after several years here. So it depends on time and effort and money and lessons. And there is some ability there to learn Japanese, if that's your thing. Daily speaking, you can get pretty conversational as far as intermediate and living here. I could get around in probably 6 months to a year. But again, I lived here every day. I went out with my little phrase book and I made effort to talk and interact with people outside of my job, which was English teaching at the time. So yeah, it varies greatly. I know people who have lived here just a couple of years and they're way better than I am at speaking. And I know people who have lived here longer than I am who can barely tell you and ask a question about how's the weather. So how can I improve my Japanese speaking skills? A lot of people say listening and reading, which does help a lot. But I don't think, as far as the intermediate level here, we're not talking about being super fluent, just the ability to get out, interact with people, and talk and have the same conversations again and again and again. Comfort level and experience help you communicate a lot. It doesn't mean that you're going to stand in front of a group of 100 people and speak fluent Japanese for an hour, but you can have conversations that certainly help you get through the day living here. How can I effective methods for learning kanji? Some people write. I didn't really like that. Spaced repetition apps are pretty good. Reading is pretty good. Seeing it in daily life here also helps. Exposure and time. There's no magic secret really there. Although the spaced repetition over time, statistically speaking, does tend to help people at least remember what they've seen and learned. What are the best resources for beginners in Japanese? YouTube is pretty good these days. I listen to a lot there, and there's a lot of grammar lessons and reading lessons. And I just did one that did like 177 grammar points for the JLPT, the Japanese test. Also, there are books. Almost any bookstore here. Minin no Nihongo. I've got all the books around me. What do I got here? Minin no Nihongo, the Kanzen Master. This is the Japanese. They're specific to the Japanese language proficiency test. You can order the old test. There's also like theme specific books. So you just go to the bookstore and I look at them and I pick the one. But generally, I don't buy books much anymore because it's all free or low cost or whatnot on the internet. So, and there's a lot of good websites. I also I use like JLPT Sensei and JLPT boot Camp and MLC Japanese. So you can look all of those up there. They're pretty good. How important is learning grammar in Japanese? It's pretty important. I mean, words are great, but you have to make sense. Otherwise, nobody knows what you're saying. I don't spend a lot of time on super advanced grammar, except when I'm studying for the test. I try to learn a lot of basic grammar patterns. And if it comes up during the day, maybe I review it and try to get better, especially when I was lower level. Desu and arimasu and all the be verb and basic eat, drink. You want to learn basic things first and get really good at that, and then continue to add things to your speaking and listening and understanding toolkit. What are some common mistakes learners make in Japanese? Probably not studying enough. And a lot of the mistakes here for the foreigners who live here and visit here, they think like, I just live here, I'm just going to be amazing at Japanese with little to no effort. Maybe that's some people, but the average person I know, even if they say they don't study, they watch a lot of news, they read a lot of manga, which is the comic books, they interact with a lot of people, or they have to use it in real life to get by. They don't just sit around and do nothing and get good at Japanese. In my experience, I won't say it's impossible to sit around and do nothing and be great, but not my case. I work really hard at my Japanese and it still sucks. How can I practice listening comprehension in Japanese? I listened to a lot of people when I stood on the train, listened to a lot of people when I worked in a Japanese environment, which helps here. If you're not there, there's again a lot of YouTube content. There's old JLPT listening. You're going to hear me talk about that test a lot because I'm in the middle of studying for it. That's what brings this topic up. You can do a lot of listening there. I do a lot of shadowing, hit or miss there. Help. That's more for speaking than listening. I watch Amazon Prime. I was watching Wicked, pretty good movie in Japanese just yesterday for a bit for some fun practice. Try to make it fun, try to make it immersive. And the more you do, the better. Generally, again, I try to do it in a sense of conversational Japanese, which is most things. I don't listen to a lot of deep lectures and documentaries and stuff. Variety shows are pretty good for local dialect and things. You know, it's got to be fun. And again, time trumps almost everything. How can I find language exchange partners for Japanese? I used to go out to the bars pre-pandemic a lot and hang out with the old dudes. People come in, they want to speak a little English. I want to speak a little Japanese. I used to go to a bar and hang out and just talk to staff. Again, that's a certain kind of Japanese. That's not going to get you super fluent for a business setting, but it does get you super good at asking for things, getting around and understanding things. And of course, situational Japanese. I used to go into the bank and ask a question if I had something, a cell phone place, my eyeglasses were broken. I would go in and try to fix my nose pieces, or the screws were loose, or the lens popped out. Or I'd go to the train station just for kicks and ask, can I buy a ticket? How do I use this machine? And you make opportunities to get better. What role does culture play in learning Japanese? Again, there's cultural aspect in every language. Here, you have to learn what you can say and what you cannot say. And there's the outward real meaning and the underneath meaning. It's hard to say because every situation is different. There's a culture for living here. There's a culture for traveling here. There's a culture for working here. And that requires a different level and different type and different kind of Japanese. And you learn it as you go along. And if you make mistakes, you do. The Japanese people tend to be a bit more forgiving of the foreigner, as long as you're not being a complete jerk than you might expect. How can I find a language exchange partner here for Japanese? Italki, you can go on the internet. You can do almost any number of things. It's not hard these days. You can just say, hey, I want to speak Japanese. Somebody will usually help you. There are community centers if you live in Japan, and you can find, sometimes they offer free, the local one over there in the next town over offers free lessons or low cost lessons. And the next two towns over offers a class on Saturday. Again, these are talking like lower intermediate. You're not going to get super fluent there. And you can pay big money, like YMCA schools in Japan and different language schools. You can pay big money and get there. A lot of the young people from different countries, especially around Asia, are coming here. They want to live and work, so they try to get a high level of Japanese quickly. What are the differences between formal and informal Japanese? You can go on the internet. There's Keigo. There's the high level of Japanese. Again, for a foreigner, in my case, I know it. When I hear it, I can say some things, but nobody really beats me up as long as I'm saying something reasonably close in Japanese. Although if I had a job that required it, I'd have to study just like anybody else. How can I enhance my vocabulary in Japanese? Learn it, space repetition, read a lot, see a lot, do a lot, listen a lot. It's an immersive kind of thing over time. You don't get great at vocabulary in one day. You get it over weeks and months and years. So there's that. What are some recommended textbooks for learning Japanese? I think I mentioned that Mina no Nihongo was pretty good. There's Genki series 1, 2, and 3. That's pretty good for a lot of people, a lot of friends. The Kanzen Master series for the JLPT test are also popular. I like all those. And there's specific textbooks that you can buy for grammar and listening and reading. I had a Nihongo Hanaso, like shadowing. That wasn't too terrible. It depends on your goals. There's business level Japanese books that I used to have too, if you like that. How can I effectively use flashcards for vocabulary retention? I generally spent back in the day, even now, like 30 minutes to an hour on my spaced repetition. So I used to do it in the morning during my lunch break, and in the evening when I came home, so spread it out. Again, trying to just get good at what I know and try to add as many vocabulary as I can. For me, it's a slow process. I'm not great. I have an excellent memory in English. My memory, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to follow in Japanese. So I work really hard to memorize. But even for me, who's 50 and not great at such things, if I use the cards religiously, I learned quite a bit. I go back to some of my old books where I had like notes of what I didn't know, and I can read it easily. So over time, it did get in there somehow. I wish it was faster, but it was not. What online platforms are best for studying Japanese? I like YouTube a lot. I said Amazon Prime. I like MLC Japanese. I like Japanese JLPT Sensei, and I like Japanese Pod 101, like a podcast kind of thing. Again, I combine things. I use what's free, and I combine and I try to mix it up, because apparently hearing different people say the same things helps your memory more. If you hear six people say something, the brain recognizes that on a subconscious level as important, and apparently it can like triple your ability to link. So I recommend that. Don't just listen to like one person talk about grammar. Find the same similar grammar stuff, and then when you hear more video on YouTube, you getting exposure to the common things, and not just some rare thing that really doesn't serve much of a purpose beyond passing the test, which is kind of important. How can I stay motivated in learning Japanese, or while learning Japanese? Make it a job. I get up every day. I want to study. I study as much as I can, even when I was working a lot. And it's a responsibility. If I want to get better, I have to do the work. Nobody does that but me. And I make it a priority in my life. And I do sacrifice things like watching TV or hobby time and such, so that if it's not important to you, again, it's not going to go very well, likely. What are the benefits of learning Japanese? Certainly, it helps with employment here, especially if you have some other marketable skills. It doesn't hurt when you're living here, and it doesn't hurt when you're traveling here. And if you happen to be married or have to deal with school systems in that as a parent, or a husband in the hospital and things, the more you know, the better. Again, it takes very little Japanese for me to exist daily, but there are times when I'm really glad that I spent time, energy, and effort to communicate and learn and be able to do things alone. How can I practice reading in Japanese? Here, of course, I walk around and see a lot of signs, and there's Google Translate. I take a lot of pictures in the old days and then go home and look up stuff that I don't know. You can read newspapers. That's a higher level. There's NHK, EasyWeb, and kids newspapers that you can do for free generally. Asahi Shimbun, I think, even has like a kids offering. So you can read that. JLPT study books offer a lot of examples of reading. I got a book of there's a pink book somewhere here with like 50 reading examples. So again, you can buy books with like Duolingo translations. I got Tensei Jingo, which is like Asahi Shimbun, like op-ed, Vox Populi, Vox Die, which I read, and it's got furigana. It's a little harder. Again, it depends on your level, right? If you're low level, then stick with kids' books and manga and things. If you're higher level, maybe you challenge yourself to read newspapers, but that can be a really big jump from intermediate to advanced level Japanese. But reading is good. Reading just above your level is better. Don't read too easy, because that's a waste, and don't read too difficult, because you're just looking upwards at that point. You can just save that for like your vocabulary study time. What are some useful apps for learning Japanese? I don't use a lot of them. I use like the spaced repetition for the vocabulary. The rest of the stuff just online. Again, YouTube. I like YouTube. Why? It's free. Don't spend a lot of money on apps and things. I know people. I don't want to knock anybody for trying to make a buck, and I don't want to knock anybody who says, "Oh, this is worth spending the money." But I spent like, I don't know, $5 on a spaced repetition thing for all the JLPT vocabulary, and I use it every day. It's great. But I could get it for free on the internet too. How does Japanese pronunciation differ from English? It's a different language. Japanese pronunciation for an English speaker is not terribly difficult. There are points like L's and R's, and U's kind of get people. And I have trouble still to this day between Juiji and Juichiji, 10 and 11. So again, any number of teachers and textbooks, when you get into it, you're like, wow, if you're understandable. I try to be as good as I can. I don't really stay up late at night worried that I'm not perfect at Japanese pronunciation. Same thing when I tell people with English pronunciation, you're not perfect, but you just have to be good enough to be understood. It's enough, in my opinion. What are the challenges of learning Japanese for English speakers? From a practical point, the grammar is generally backwards, so that takes some getting used to. Dropping subjects and nuance and understanding who they're talking about, especially when you're in the middle of conversations, can be kind of hard. And of course, let's be honest, the reading for a non-symbolic kind of kanji person, like if you're Chinese, you know a lot by default. I started at 0 kanji, and I had to learn a lot. It takes a long time just to get even intermediate understanding. And even now, if you don't know the word, you're pretty screwed. Although now the apps like Google Translate and the camera function on that helps me. So understanding and learning it isn't nearly as hard as it used to be, but it takes a lot of effort. I'm not going to lie. I've spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort on trying to learn how to read Japanese. I'm pretty good, I think. 20 years here, I can read most things. I'm not going to read like deep medical knowledge, and I'm not going to read deep economic news, but that's right. How can I incorporate Japanese media into my studies? A lot of people use the podcast. They're pretty popular. I know my friend used to sit at the bar and drink and watch NHK News, and he passed the top level. A lot of people use YouTube. I know a lot of people use Netflix, Hulu. Some people use that with subtitles. Some people use that without subtitles. I prefer a combination of both. If I know a movie, I generally watch it just in Japanese, because like an 80s or 90s American movie. If it's a Japanese drama, maybe then I put in some English subtitles at least once. Repetition. I generally don't rewatch things, but I do if it's entertaining. I've watched a few Japanese series. I watch cartoons. I like Doraemon. I watch Curious George. Simple but communicative. I watch a lot of dramas. Some Nickelodeon shows were on Amazon Prime with a good interpersonal dialogue and family dialogue. So I felt like that was kind of helping my daily speaking. What's the significance of honorifics? Sama, guess if you know that one, you know like 99%. And but san is fine. Nobody picks on me too much for not knowing the correct honorific, and I don't really care when people don't. You got to be careful if you're really angry, like if you say Tanaka, yeah, you want to put san or something there, but otherwise it might be a problem. But how can I prepare for the Japanese language proficiency test, JLPT? There's a number of courses you can do. YouTube offers a lot of free content, a lot of free websites. I generally spend as much time as I can. I put a mix between vocabulary study, grammar study, and reading study, and then listening. I study less listening because I have lived here a long time. But if I were a new person to Japanese and trying to pass that test, I would certainly spend a lot more time listening, because on the test, it's a third like grammar and word usage, a third of reading, and a third of listening. And so if you can pick up a lot of the 60 points, for example, in the listening, if you can get a high number of that and do so-so, which is in the reading, which is generally harder for people, especially at the upper level, you have a chance to pass, right? So that's up to you. But I don't spend a lot of time listening these days, because at the level, I can probably get away with not. Although I do it, I don't spend hours and hours like, do you like this? Well, where are you going? I can probably do that in my case. But if I were new to the test, the fastest way to gain points in the JLPT is to be pretty good at the listening section, especially the low hanging fruit, the basic beginner question and intermediate. If you could get all those, you'd get like 35, 40 points. And then you could kind of half-ass the rest of that test. You'd have a chance, especially like level 3, to pass for sure. What are some effective strategies for mastering kanji? Talked about the spaced repetition. A lot of people write, which I should probably do more of. Seeing it, reading it in sentences, not just the kanji, but kanji that becomes a word that becomes a sentence. It sticks in the brain a little better. That's not just me. That's like standard memorization. How can I improve my Japanese writing skills in Japanese? You got to write. Although I have read studies that just looking at it a lot naturally improves. And I do get some of that. I can write a lot of kanji, but I probably have never written a lot of them. I just have seen them enough to kind of do it. I don't write a lot. It's not really necessary for life here. Although there are situations I wish I could do more, like banking. When I sign up for things, or when I'm in the hospital, I struggle with that beyond my name. And I don't think I can write my address from memory without looking, although I just pull out my card and copy. There's a little hint. If you don't know, just pull out your name. I write everything on a piece of paper. I just copy it, because they sometimes here there's like a rule. You have to do it yourself, the honin. That's me, person. So yeah, I should write more. I wish I did, but it never came up. So I could probably write all the hiragana. I think I can write all the katakana maybe, and I can write enough kanji to get by, but that's like 20 years here. It doesn't keep me up at night. It doesn't really stop my life. But there are situations I do wish, full disclosure, I could write fluently, and it probably kicks my ass someday in a job situation. What are the best ways to learn Japanese idioms? I don't really spend a lot of time with that. You learn them as you go. It's like English. You pick up something new, because if it's interesting, then I do, but I don't spend it. There are books you can buy, and there are websites that talk about fun Japanese idioms. Sometimes if I'm just killing time and drinking or something, and I'm studying a little laid back Japanese, I do, and you pick it up when you're watching dramas and things, but I don't. How can I practice speaking Japanese daily? Shadowing. Sometimes I imagine what I would say or could say. Chat JPT I've used a few times. It's okay. Again, the more you can speak, the better. But it's not just speaking, but speaking correctly. I mean, if you just keep making the same stupid mistakes, you're just wasting time. So I do a lot more listening and reading and understanding. And then when I have a chance, like the other day, I hadn't spoken in a while, and I was in a really important situation. Suddenly, I was spitting out a lot of Japanese. So clearly, like sitting around studying Japanese daily again, a lot is helping me improve without even really. I don't really have a chance to speak. I'm sitting here alone speaking English. So, cultural nuances to be aware of in Japanese. You got to be more aware, I guess, of what's left unsaid than what's said, which is hard for foreigners. Even after 20 years here, there are situations where I don't quite understand that kind of nuance, but I'm pretty good in most sense. If you're a good person and you're respectful, then you generally have no trouble as long as you're careful on what you say. Less is more here. A lot of foreigners even get a high level of Japanese, and then at the end of the day, they're not very good because they step right in it. They've said too much, and then the other person knows they said it and they know what they mean. So I try to act like I don't know anything. I call it the motion moment, where I pretend like I don't know what's going on. It's pretty effective. How can I use social media to enhance my Japanese learning? I used to post a lot on Facebook in Japanese, and sometimes on X, which was Twitter. I did just for fun. I used to write a journal and write messages to my friends and Japanese teacher and my lovely wife. I wrote messages to her and other people, like school and things, my company. I would write in Japanese. So again, not deep Japanese. Nobody expects me to write a novel in Japanese. Nobody expects me to write an essay in Japanese. So if I can write a sentence or two or a paragraph and fluently answer a question, and again, predictor on some of the messaging helps me a lot. So if I'm good enough to be close, they're like, wow, and Google Translate, copy, paste is pretty effective there for sure. I'm not gonna lie, it's great. You would never know. Why would I try hard? There's no reason. Some common phrases used in everyday Japanese. If you could talk about greetings, weather, food, transportation, getting around, and saying goodbye, you can get around Japan pretty easily. It doesn't take a lot of Japanese. I used to joke like I could go all week without beyond Ohayo gozaimasu, good morning, and otsukaresama deshita, see ya, I gotta go. It doesn't take a lot. That's part of the problem to learn Japanese. If you don't make opportunities to speak and use Japanese, even living here, other than sitting down for the test, that'll be the most Japanese I use all year. How can I learn Japanese through anime and manga? Listening, reading, speaking. Some people I used to read that stuff out loud. Not a lot of manga, but a lot of newspaper and things. It helps. It's fun, and the brain realizes it's fun, and the memory improves. Boring things, of course, you get bored quickly and you're not focused. So if you're interested in manga, then it helps you focus. Video games, my friend used video games a lot, playing and have to make the right choice. And that does help me with some of the app websites and things. I use them just in Japanese. Some of my music software that when I write is in Japanese. It's good. How can I find Japanese language classes in my area? Almost any community center or local area, bigger area, has an international association that can vary in size. It's not that hard, but honestly, they're almost all online now, and I've had friends and acquaintances who said they're pretty good. So, and I did, again, YMCA school. You can pay big money for established schools. Type in the internet Japanese schools in my area. But if you're not in Japan, I know a lot of the bigger cities now offer like Japanese kind of associations, and some of the local colleges, you can audit classes. Sometimes you don't have to pay anything. I had a friend do that in America at Ohio State. What are the differences between spoken and written Japanese? Japanese written tend to be more formal, and so that's a lot more grammar. Spoken, like in English, it can be more laid back, especially among friends with dialects and things. And a little looser. So, I mean, I could spend an hour explaining the differences, or just know that generally high level, although I will say in written Japanese, just like in America, text messages and tend to be really didactic and short. So I wouldn't worry. If you get that far in Japanese, you don't have to ask me for that kind of advice. If you have to ask, you should just keep studying Japanese. How can I effectively review what I've learned in Japanese? I do an 80-20, 80% review, 20% new. And I review what I don't want to. You want to be extraordinary at the ordinary. 90% of conversation is 1,000 words or less. And that doesn't mean you're going to understand everything, but you kind of have some context. So the better that you can get in using the words that you know, you're going to be pretty good. And this, of course, if you struggled if I go to the doctor and I struggled with like chuzian, like ear infection, then I'm going to go look that up. If I go to the dentist, haguki, itai, or haga, itai, mushiba, cavity, then I'm going to go look up those words, and I'm going to get better the next time I go to the dentist every month. And now when he asks me the same questions that troubled me the first time, I'm pretty good. He's like, well, Nihongo Jozu, you're so good at Japanese. I'm not really good. It's that I go to the dentist every month, which is possible here. What role does kanji play in Japanese literature? Literacy. Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. If you know the kanji, you can know the words. If you know the words, you know the sentence. If you know the sentence, you know the paragraph, and hopefully you can understand. It's all related. It's like English. If you know the alphabet, you can sound out words. If you sound out words and understand the meaning, then you can make it. So, yeah, I don't really. So I didn't really look at these questions at AI. God bless them. How can I balance learning vocabulary and grammar? I spend 80% of my time learning vocabulary and then 20% of my time learning grammar for sure. If you don't know the words, it's tough to understand. Understanding and response is much more important than the grammar, right? In my opinion. So yeah, I study a lot of daily vocabulary. Situational themed vocabulary helps me if I don't know something, especially I'm getting ready to go into the hospital here in another month. So I'm learning a lot of hospital stuff that maybe I knew or know, but a lot of the textbooks aren't going to go on like, oh, I'm dying of pain. Please call my wife. I'm looking stuff up like that. What are some tips for understanding in Japanese dialects? Get into it. There are books you could buy, but a lot of that's just really practical application. I used to, again, sit in the bars with the old guys and talk. In this area, Kansai dialect is pretty popular, and Banshuben is a really, really local dialect. But from Kyoto, Osaka, this area, and over to Okayama, there's a slight differences. Now, how much a foreigner needs to know, it's more for me fun and just being one of the guys drinking. But you pick it up. Literally, I used to go to the bar every day. So I got really good at the dialects. And they're like, wow, he's so good at the dialects. But you don't want to use that in like most business settings, school settings, and job settings, especially as a foreigner. People don't like that. And sometimes when you get pretty good at Japanese, people don't love that. Good is okay. Great is not so looked upon favorably because they feel like you're better than them. So I try not to look too amazing, but I am pretty amazing at the local dialect. At least I used to be when I went out. How can I use music to learn Japanese? I used to go to karaoke a lot. They have the kanji and the furigana easier to read Japanese kana on the top. And so I did a lot of slow songs over and over again, and I got better. Even if I didn't know the meaning, I could read it. And then reading turned into understanding, and understanding turned into fluency. And then I used faster songs to see how good I was. Then you see the same kanji and like in American Western kind of music in English, the same words are a lot. So you see the same stuff and you get really good at things like love or people, hito. It's not rocket science, but karaoke was a fun way. What are the best practices for learning Japanese pronunciation? I listen a lot. I shadow a lot. I listen to how people talk and I try to mimic and make it as close as I can. But I have no illusions that I'm going to be a native sounding. I sound like a foreigner when I speak Japanese, and that's okay. How can I set realistic goals for learning Japanese? I don't set any goals. My only goal is that I study every day as much as I can. Again, my goal, if I have one, is the Japanese test. But my goal is to understand Japanese and be able to respond fluently as I can in situations. But I don't setting goals. I mean, either you set them too low or they're too high. So my goal is, again, I can control my daily study effort, and I try to make the most of the time that I have, whether that's 20 minutes a day or these days several hours. Yeah. What are some cultural events that can aid in learning Japanese? There's lots of festivals. There's lots of community events. Schools, if you're a foreigner like me, Western, who worked in a school as an English teacher, you're going to get all the sports days and bunkasai cultural days and music festivals and just daily life and living. Living here is a cultural event. If you're not, a lot of big communities now have like Japanese festivals. It's a good chance. I know the local my old university has a Japanese international club now, so you can speak Japanese every day to Japanese foreign exchange students there who also want to learn English. So sure, but be careful of the foreign exchange language exchanges. Somebody always benefits more. Even when you're married, people are like, oh, you're married, you must be. My lovely wife speaks great English. My Japanese is still a work in progress. How can I use a podcast to improve my Japanese? You can listen to them. Some of them are more educational. Some of them are general. Again, if it's above your level, it's not really effective for learning Japanese. And a lot of them have too much English. That's not great. Stories. I used a lot of audiobooks, like basic stories. Again, you could watch maybe once with English and listen again. Multiple listenings kind of helped me. I listen to a lot of like YouTube stuff that has like sentences with like some basic vocabulary word or a couple of examples. Again, just trying to get touching the word, contact with the word, and hopefully that it sticks later. What are the benefits of immersion in learning Japanese? At first, it's really hard and can be frustrating, and it can be opposite effect. You can be really down and give up. But later, as you learn something, certainly the daily life things and the repetition of things like getting something to eat, going out, transportation, going to a cento to get a bath, buying a ticket for a train, getting a movie ticket, withdrawing money from an ATM. All of those daily experiences, not one time, but hundreds of times, make that pretty easy over time. Getting a beer, getting an extra beer, things that were nice little. I remember my first year here, I used the phone for the first time in Japanese and I ordered a pizza. Just small little mini challenges. I don't have goals, but I have little mini challenges in language. Can I do that? Can I say that? And if I can't, I go to, if I'm in an emergency setting and I can't do something, then I go on my own and look it up or ask somebody. And the next time I'm better, especially things like that are really hard, like doctors and hospitals, which I've done far too many times this year. About 5 more questions. How can I track my progress in learning Japanese? Again, the Japanese test for a lot of people, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 levels helps. The apps also keep track of how much you're studying and how many kanji or vocabulary you have learned or how many times you've done some grammar. If that's your thing, I track my progress in that. I have studied. Again, if you do something like Duolingo has Japanese now, you can, I'm 539 days, but I don't usually use it for Japanese. I use it more for Spanish and Chinese, but that's just my personal preference. I bought the family plan. What are some common Japanese slang terms? There are a zillion. It depends on your age. I'm older, so I don't really use a lot. Majika, I mean, there's one if you want, really. But again, there are lots of books and websites you can look up all that. I don't spend a lot of time on that because it's not useful for my daily life. How can I prepare for a trip to Japan while learning the language? Again, you can get Duolingo. You can get a language partner. It doesn't take a lot of Japanese. And really, if you're just going to come here for a couple of weeks, if you're going to study a couple months and come here, it's not worth a lot of time. If you got a phrase book and Google Translate, I would make sure I had the apps. And if you want to be cool and have a little Jiko Shokai, a self-introduction, like my name is, and I'm from America, America karekimashita, you'd be awesome. And yoroshiku onegaishimasu. You'd be people like give you a little pat on the. Most people just want some affirmation that they're good at something. So, all right, you're not going to get good in a couple months. At least not anything that you couldn't do with that app or something. So, and if there was a major problem, you're not remotely going to have enough Japanese for that. So there you go. Two more? What are the differences between Japanese and other Asian languages? Japanese is Japanese and Chinese is Chinese and Vietnamese. They are related to some degree. I know the kanji coming from China and parts of Asia. That's why there are multiple readings of Japanese kanji, because they came to Japan in different areas at different times and the readings varied, which can make learning kanji here a lot harder than Chinese. I know I picked up a lot more Chinese kanji quickly than I did in Japanese. Some of them have 4 to 5 readings. It's really hard. And the usage is really hard. You just have to memorize. That takes some effort. Last question. How can I create a study schedule for learning Japanese? Again, I make it a priority. I do it. I don't just say I got to study. I say I'm going to get up at 5 or 5:30 and I'm going to study Japanese for 1 hour. Doesn't really control what I study there, but that I'm going to study. And people say, well, I'm going to study, and they don't really set a definite time, and they don't really set definite things that they're going to study. Like that's good. I'm going to study kanji, vocabulary. Again, most of my study is vocabulary and sentence patterns to get better, listening to reinforce that, and reading. Again, my level is different. When I'm early, I'm going to learn a lot of hiragana, katakana, and basic kanji, and I'm going to do a lot of listening of really basic phrases. And always I use a +1. That's not me. That's standard ESL and second language study, a little higher than my level. And I try to build upon what I know. And I try not to forget what I learned while trying to news. You got to keep moving forward. The biggest mistake is you can get too bogged down in like review. And you're like, wow, I used to do that when I was first here. The first couple of years, I did that basic textbooks. I got really good at like, what do you want? How are you? Where are you from? And I didn't really get good one step beyond that. And I felt kind of lost where I couldn't communicate. So it's important to keep going forward to some degree. You don't have to go warp speed. That's dumb too, but find a pace and a balance, whatever works for you. Again, based on the time and energy and effort that you have to put into the Japanese study, how much you study in review and how much you're going forward. In my case now, I can study a lot more new things, quote unquote, because I'm studying 3, 4, 5 hours a day. So that's easier. If I had an hour, I would spend maybe 10 minutes on some new vocabulary, 10 minutes on grammar, and then 10 minutes of reading. And then the rest of the time I would review what I had learned the day before. I knew I had a Japanese teacher that was big on like 1 page a day and go back 1 page a day. It was great, but it didn't really push me to a level I thought I wanted. So I kind of did one page, but I skipped what I knew well. And so it was like one page highlights of what I didn't know, and then going forward to new things. So I was continually a process of like really reviewing my weak points. And the downside of that is that you feel on some level that you're good at things, but you're not as good as you think you are. And then you realize in real speaking situations or where you had to do it or come up with more Japanese that you're not quite as good as you thought you were. And then I go back and I focus that. So it's a marathon, not a sprint, but you have to do the work. You have to put in the time. Again, there's tons of apps and tons of websites, and there's tons of people available, especially these days, to help you on your Japanese journey. But yeah, that was a really good, better than I thought. That was some good questions. So as always, I wish you the best of luck in your Japanese journey. You can always follow me on Craig Hoffman 11 on Twitter for more tips about that, as well as chess, Japanese food, and social media, writing, and life in general. I know a lot about everything. God bless me. As always, enjoy your life. And until next time, that's it. And have a great, great day.